Welcome to LOA Today. Walt and life coach Joel Elston here. Today is Thursday, July the 5th, 2018, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, your first daily dose of happy for the day. And we hope that you had a wonderful 4th of July. It was a day for celebration and for cookouts and for beach and for mountains and for all kinds of fun stuff. And we hope you took advantage of every single option that was available to you, because that's one of the ways we build our daily dose of happy. I mean, it's not just the radio show. It's not just the podcast, Joel. We're all supposed to build our own, aren't we?
Well, and that's sort of the point of our show, and sort of teaching that concept that you can be happy wherever you're at. Where, throughout the day, the 4th of July is a great day, but also it's just an example of it could be an incredible day, or you could do nothing. Again, it's all up to you. Your happiness is your responsibility, and it's also a privilege to be able to be in charge of your own happiness. That's the amazing thing.
That's true. That's something we kind of overlook, isn't it? But it is a privilege to be in charge of your own happiness. So many of us will tend to look at it as, I'm just not happy. My life isn't what I want it to be, and so forth. And we don't think about it as being in charge of our own happiness, but we still are.
Well, and that's I often, in one of my book titles that I haven't paid a lot of attention to lately as far as writing, but it is the human superpower, your perspective. You're in charge, your perspective of happiness, and the idea that there is a location or a person or a relationship that is going to make you happy is the great delusion that most of us face. Is along the way you realize a location, a person, or a place, or a thing is not going to make you happy. There could be some momentary joys around some of that, but there's no instilling happiness by an outside source. It's an inside job, as they say, and you're in charge of it. And you can make it as complicated as you want to make it, or you could simply be happy. I personally do that with grounding myself by reminding myself of the abundance in my life, the people that I love in my life, the great life that I have, my great health, all that stuff that I'm grateful for allows me to be happy. And it's not something that did happen from the outside. I fixed that on the inside. And so that's the exciting piece to me is we have that. And the victimhood mentality that a lot of people demonstrate. I have some very dear friends that really are stuck on, if this would happen, I would be happy.
Right.
And I try to constantly remind them, be happy, and then that may happen or may not. But at the same time, you're happy, and then you're more likely to attract the things that you're trying to get to.
And we ended up picking our topic once again from your timeline on Facebook, where you post all kinds of interesting posts and memes and so forth. And this one caught my attention because it's tied directly to what we're talking about here. Managing other people's happiness will rob you of your own. Ironically, most of us aren't really good at managing our own happiness, and yet at the same time, we seem to take it upon ourselves to manage other people's happiness, which on the face of it sounds ridiculous. I mean, if anyone who isn't successfully managing their own happiness really isn't qualified to manage somebody else's happiness. And yet we do that. Why do we do that?
Well, and one of the most, and this can happen in so many different contexts, but one of the things that I deal with on a daily basis in my private coaching practice is I work with a lot of addiction, and a lot of my clients are, let's say, 20-year-old males, 20 to 30-year-old males, and there's almost inevitably a mother that is attached that is codependent is the sort of the clinical term used to know about, but it boils down to, my definition of codependency is attempting to manage other people's feelings or happiness. And it is such an amazing thing that when I'm working with the moms of this, it's so difficult to get them to understand that they are not in charge of their son's happiness or their daughter's happiness. They're not in charge of their husband's happiness. And they're often the most unhappy people on the planet in an attempt to control other people's, I hear that I live in a hell. I live in a prison. And I keep trying to say, you live in the hell of your own creation or the prison of your own making, because you're not working on your stuff. You've attached your happiness to this person being happy. If you live your life like that, it is just such a sad way to waste an existence by living that way, because you're never going to be fulfilled. There's not a moment of fulfillment in another person's happiness. When their well-being is placed on that, you don't put yourself in a position to be happy yourself, because you're out of control for them. And like you're saying, the people that are least likely to control their own happiness are the ones trying to control someone else's emotions in the same way. And it's a recipe for just sort of disaster. And that's why codependency is a form of addiction. It's sort of another side of addiction.
I suppose that now that you mentioned that a parent can be a person who tries to play that role of making someone else happy without making themselves happy, I suppose one way we could understand that is parents almost universally want their children to have a better life than they themselves have. So maybe that falls into that category. And maybe that's where, misguided as it might be, they're figuring, well, maybe I'm not happy in my life, but by God, my kid's going to be happy.
Well, and you'll see that a lot, and I'm by no means am I talking about the mother of a 2-year-old child that's trying to. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about I poor moms. The moms are amazing, but I'm not trying to attack broadly. But I am saying that it is a common trait in addicts. I often go as far to say it's impossible to be a long-term addict without someone being codependent, or in this case, someone trying to take care of your emotions for you, or being in charge of your happiness. You can't continue to be an addict without that, because the consequences of addiction will eventually get you. It's often the people. Well, I don't want my son to be upset. Well, your son, was in an automobile accident and injured 4 people. I don't know how he's going to get out of this without being upset. He's going to have to go through some stuff. And, it's just this, but I don't want him to be upset or worried or all these other emotions that you're not in charge of that. And so taking it beyond the spectrum of the moms is we often will see in relationships or, trying to manipulate. When I was a child, I had an interesting thing that I amazing how you can go back to childhood and remember these things. I remember my mom asking me a specific question about something. I don't remember the specific question, but I do remember her asking me about, well, how do you feel about that? And when I told her, she goes, "Oh, that's wrong." And I was like, "Well, how can it be wrong? You asked me how I felt about it." And it was something that didn't match her view of how I should see something. And so I was clearly wrong in my view. Well, when I work very hard on how do you feel about that, if I don't like that question, but in case I were to ask that question, I would clearly, instantly say, well, I don't see it the same way you see it, but I completely acknowledge your feeling toward that. Your emotion, it isn't right or wrong. It is how you're feeling. You may need to figure out, you need to adjust how you're feeling, but it's not someone else's job to manage that for you. And that's what creates a lot of dysfunction. It's that, as you know, and this isn't a universal belief with all the law of attraction practitioners or life coaches, but I'm very much a big defender in an exciting, I believe very much in struggle being a good thing. I'm very much in struggle and fighting forward. I think it's the strengthening of it. I embrace struggle. I embrace challenges. My life was built on struggle and building my life up. I see great strength built from that. So I think when you're trying to manage someone's happiness, you also are trying to prevent their struggle. And I know right now, and I'm just talking about the Richmond, Virginia area. Off the top of my head, I'm counting as I'm going. There's more than this, but I am working with 10 families with at least there's 11 kids and 10 families that are debilitated by their family's wealth and their lack of struggle and their moms trying to control their happiness. And, well, I want them to do this, or I want, one young man is he doesn't want to be in his dad's law firm. He doesn't want to go to law school, but his dad is like, well, that will make you happy. That will make me happy. That will make the family happy. And the kid's like, he wants to be an artist. And it's so there's a whole, you see that a lot. Yeah. Yeah. A big discrepancy between an artist and a lawyer. And so that's the excitement to me is when you boil this down, we are in charge of that. And you would be shocked, you probably wouldn't, of the number of people that are almost offended by that. You are telling me that I am responsible? There's other factors involved. Every time I post this, somewhere along the way on Facebook, somebody will go, well, Joel, you have to admit there's other factors involved. Well, at the end of the day, no. I mean, you're still in charge. There can be factors influence how you're feeling, but at the decision to be happy will remain solely with you all the time.
That's right. Yeah. By the way, you made an interesting comment there, kind of in passing. You were talking about the question about how you're feeling. You said you don't really like that question. I thought that was intriguing. What made you say I don't really like that question?
Well, to me, it's a dismissive therapist question. It's sort of the well, how does that make you feel? Well, you know, I often use one of my inspirations in the work I do is my clients and their success. And in our book, our collaborative book that we've done together, I write a story about Marcus, and he's a young man, he's been in foster care, and he had been through just all kinds of stuff. And everybody asked him how he felt. Well, his mom died while he was in foster care, and you know, he had nowhere to go. So he remained in foster care as a mom, but never went to a funeral, never had any closure. There was nothing, you know, and all of a sudden his mom goes to prison and she dies. So in my working with him, one of the questions and this actually changed my mind about that question. He said, probably about our fifth session, he goes, I don't know if you're a really good therapist because you've never asked me how this made me feel. I got a kick out of it. Obviously not the kicking situation, but I said, well, Marcus, I said, your mom died while you were in prison and you're in foster care. I'm just going to go on a limb and say that sucks really bad. And I don't need to ask you how that felt. And he goes, thank you. He said, is that the stupidest question ever asked? And I said, it is. It's something that when most therapists, and again, this is, probably not the most popular thing with therapists when I talk about it, because that question to me means I have no clue what to say now, so I'm going to ask this question. Well, how does that make you feel? Well, clearly, and I'm not saying there can't be a scenario for that, but it is such a generic question that it multiple clients, especially my younger clients who have been through therapy a lot, will appreciate the fact that I don't want to hear that. Why are you asking that question? Is such a psychology 101 kind of thing that it's like, okay, so generic therapy question number 7 you're asking. You're reading it from the book. You're not relating to me. So I tend to not like that question unless it's and there's other ways to ask it. There's other ways to state it. Say, I'll often say, "Oh my God, that was horrible. I can't imagine how you feel," because I would have, that there's ways to do that without. Well, your entire family has been, something horrible has happened, and how does that make you feel?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and most people don't like the concept of feeling dismissed. One of the best pieces of feedback I get from my clients is they say, you really get what I'm saying. You have been through a lot of stuff. You understand what I'm relating to what you're saying. So when I fall back into generic questioning, or just that idea, and I have a list of. I do this motivational interviewing technique that is basically just, I ask a ridiculous amount of questions as I get going. It's one of the most effective tools in coaching. And I try to make them specific to the client. The general themes can be the same, but I try not to be that same redundant spewer of questions that you clearly learned at the therapy school, and at the second year of therapy school, so to speak.
Right.
You want to get it on a deeper level where you're connecting. And when you ask questions that have that rehearsed over and over type thing, it doesn't a savvy client, somebody's been through therapy, quickly picks up on that. It actually is a way that you lose sort of a connection. So that's a long answer to your question, but that is one question I try intentionally not to ask.
It's an interesting point because, I mean, I'm sure that I've never been to therapy school, as you term it, so I don't really know for sure. But I'm also married to a former therapist, so you pick stuff up as time goes on. And my guess is that probably the main reason for asking a question, well, how do you feel about that, is to help the person who is not particularly well connected to their feelings start connecting, and that certainly has a therapeutic value to it. But by the same token, I think you're right. I mean, it can be pretty insulting if you hear a question. Well, how do you feel about the fact that you got raped 3 times? Well, yeah, I don't really like it very much. I mean, come on, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't. Well, I have a friend that she refers to me. She's a PhD, very smart young lady. I actually hired her at a treatment center I was working at to do her internship. So I've known her now for 6 or 7 years, and she's in practice. And she's obviously she's a PhD, so she's not seeking stuff from me. She knows she's very well educated.
Right.
But at the same time, she referred me a few clients. And one of the feedbacks, because I'll call her Sarah. That's not her name, but I'll just call her Sarah. I said, how's it going with Sarah? And she goes, well, she's really nice. I'm really glad she referred me to you, but she's not really experienced. I said, well, what makes you think that? Well, her questions and that same analogy that this young man was talking about. He got kicked out of. In 1 week, this kid had one of the worst weeks a person can have.
Ugh.
He got kicked out of college. He came home. His mom was diagnosed with stage 4 liver cancer. His dad lost his job of 20 years, and all this happened in a week. Wow. His entire life totally changed in an incredible blow. And she literally asked the question. She said, "Well, how did all that make you feel?"
Oh my goodness!
And he was like, "Well, huh." And of course, he gets into his defiant, she doesn't know what she's doing mode. So automatically the session is basically run. And so he's like, great. It made me feel absolutely effing wonderful. Great. Well, and so he's in that mode. And then she said, well, I sense a little bit of hostility. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So now this session has turned into this train wreck. And fortunately I was able she was really open to feedback. She said, well, to be honest, and I know her, so I know she doesn't, I'm trying to come up with a concept. I know she personally is an incredible young lady who feels a lot. And if anything, she was emotionally caught up in the moment, and she fell back on those default questions because she didn't want to get into an attachment issue or trying to be, enmeshed in his situation and not get emotional. So, and that was exactly right. As we were talking, she said, I almost started crying. Wow. And so I fell back into that. And I said, well, it had an unintentional effect. You went the opposite way.
Right.
And so you see that, and that's the beauty of what we do. When you're able to sit back and see life from a different perspective. It's just like being happy. What is being happy? What are these, what is your version of happy is possibly different than my version of happy.
Oh, yeah, I would think so. And well, even more than that, I mean, the idea of what you just told the story about Sarah, I mean, clearly the way you told the story shows that she wasn't just being, a dumb machine. She was dealing with her own emotional reaction to it. And like you said, a therapist doesn't want to attach. That's part of what, that little wall is supposed to be between the therapist and the client. There's a certain level of detachment there so that the therapist can be of most therapeutic value, because it doesn't really help if you're attached to the client you're working with. Well,
sure.
Here's a case where someone was trying to, not intentionally, I mean, Sarah wasn't deliberately trying to do this, but she was basically trying to take responsibility for the other person's happiness. Now, she was doing it in a way that was saying, I don't know how to react to the situation because it just hit me in the face. But nevertheless, that's what it added up to. It added up to her trying to control the other person's happiness. With, I mean, it wasn't a disaster. It's not like the earth ended or something like that. But it certainly ended the session and not on a very happy note.
Yeah. Well, and fortunately, she'd already referred to me, and so he followed through with a referral, and we were able to really heal that, and in fact, they have a great therapeutic relationship right now.
Oh, good.
And she calls it a great learning experience as well. But once he understood where she was coming from, then but when you're trying to manage everybody's emotion in a room, she was trying to keep herself composed and at the same time control how he was responding to her. She was more. I said, well, in reality, if you would have shed a tear and say, I am sorry, it's not professional for me to get emotionally attached, but I really can imagine how incredibly hard that was for you. And I'm feeling that. If she would have done that, again, she would have stated the fact that I shouldn't be emotionally attached. That would have possibly been a connection. There's many social workers that would be like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that would be a good thing to do. But it's, to me, it would have a more of a connecting factor than what it ended up being. Mm-hmm. And again, being in charge of your own emotion sometimes will allow you to acknowledge your own emotion and not be fearful of it, not go that opposite direction. But we have such an incredible, I think, an incredible skill set as humans that when I say our perspective is our superpower, it's also our greatest weakness, because when you allow other people to control your perspective, here's a really good example. This is, I don't ever notice this. I don't care. It's irrelevant. I do Facebook, as you said. I've tried desperately never to get into political discussions. Mm-hmm. I will. Everything's positive or humorous is what I'm trying to keep it at. Right. I'll put a humorous thing up occasionally,
and it works.
But I seldom will. Yeah, and it works. And it's almost a business tool for me. I have people see that Facebook and see what I'm about, and I've gotten several clients off of Facebook. So I really view it in a good way.
Sure.
I have a friend that he's like, I've had 4 people unfriend me on Facebook, and it really upsets me. And I go, who are they? He goes, well, I don't really know. I said, well, so
oh my
4 people. He said, I just know I had 590, whatever. I'm just throwing random numbers. I had 590 friends, and today I have 584. I go, you look at that, and he goes, oh, you don't? I go, I don't. And so one of the things that I started recently was an Instagram account. And it's funny because I never look at stuff like that, but Instagram, because on Facebook, I got, you get a number, it's over 1,000, you don't even pay attention. It's what up and down. There's people canceling their accounts. I don't watch it at all, but Instagram, I was watching it. And one of the things that is more common on Instagram and Twitter than Facebook is you'll get a bunch of people request, will follow you in hopes that you'll follow them back, because it's always considered cool to have more followers than you're following. Mm-hmm. And so they will often follow you in hopes you'll follow them back. And then when you follow them back, they will then delete you, or they'll unfollow you.
All right. So they can get that positive. Yeah.
Yeah. So they have and again, that's all silly to me. And so, I in the beginning, I was adding all this law of attraction stuff, these positive people on Instagram. And then I started, the more I added, at one point, in one day, I went from like 200 followers to like 600 followers. I thought, oh my gosh, this is really awesome. Well, the next day I was down to 502. Then the next day I was down to 400. Well, what did I do? And I go, I didn't do anything. And then I laughed thinking it's irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything.
That's right.
But when you put that perspective, your feelings or emotion based on someone else's view or where they're at or what their mission is, it really is it keeping up with that kind of thing. You're allowing other people to be in control of your happiness, and that's huge when you understand it.
So for someone who has been perhaps trying to control other people's happiness, maybe because they're a parent who wants their kid to be happier than they were, maybe they figure that, if they can control somebody else's happiness, they'll be vicariously happy, whatever. Okay, we've been talking about this, and now we've kind of broken through to them. They realize that's probably not my best strategy. But what do I do now? So let's say you're somebody who's constantly in the habit of looking out for somebody else's happiness. How do you switch? How do you make the change?
as you know, you got to allow me the obvious. You just change. Now,
oh, come on, that's much too simple.
The problem is it is. Because when you have a pattern of behavior, I'll give again a generic type thing, but again, it's one of the mom-son things we have going on. You know, the mom all through high school made sure everything was the kid never was allowed to fail. He forgot his homework. There's a big project. The mom would do his project for him. She got to a point she was making fake doctor's notes for them. She literally she photoshopped doctor's notes and to cover up absences, and she basically graduated for them for high school.
Wow.
Then they go off to college, and it's not that hard. It's not that easy to do because you're away. And so she's trying to do that there. And then they bust out of college and they're trying, and this one in particular, she just keeps trying to do it. Well, and then the more she pulls away and she's realizing this isn't good for my son. I really haven't done him any favors. And she tries to pull away. Then the son goes, you don't love me. You used to do these things for me. And then her guilt comes in and she does it again. And it's just, she can't stop. It is as bad as any addiction I've ever seen. It's very sad because she's attaching her son's happiness to love. I mean, and again, there's a lot of reasons behind that. So most of the times that people are doing this, it isn't the desire to really control their people's happiness. It's desperation for your own happiness or desperation for someone to love you. I want him to love me, and so if I don't let him struggle, he will love me. And one of the and most of the time they didn't have love or family love growing up, and there's a whole bunch of dynamics behind it. So the concept of just stop while you said it perfectly, Walt. Well, that's just too. It is. It's they can't. It's so ingrained in their behavior. You almost have to wean them off of the concept, just like you would a drug. We have to start with, how are you helping your son? At what age? I right now, as I mentioned before, I know one particular thing. He's a 29-year-old male living in his wealthy parents' basement, and they're desperate to get rid of him. Not in a bad way. They just want him to go survive and thrive. And both parents right now realize this is a very bright kid. He was a super athlete. He's got a super high IQ. He's a good looking kid. And he lives in his parents' basement, and there's no foreseeable way out of it, because the moment they start pushing, then he has all these reasons he can't leave, and then he becomes physically ill. And I just think it's not really physical illness, but the whole, he's scared now to go face the world. They've taken this incredibly bright, gifted person and unintentionally made him as disabled as anyone with a severe mental illness or severe impairment, because they've helped create that. And so stopping it is the best way to do it is why do you think you're helping? And then what are you getting out of it? So you almost get into a cognitive behavioral technique, or almost helping them walk through, talk to them about what they're trying to accomplish, break down the act. Your son wanted the last 3 times you bought your son a car, he ended up pawning the title and lost the car. So now he needs another car, and you're going to go co-sign for him. And so when he doesn't pay the payments, because he's never had to do that, you're going to pay it for him. But yet you're walking through these, setting up these boundaries instead of saying, "So take the bus until you save up money to buy a car." Just be in charge. Mm-hmm. And if you would allow him to do that, then he would. One of the greatest things my parents did is in the middle of my addictive behavior is they truly cut me off. And rightfully so. My addiction, again, they did not help me in any way. They loved me, but they did not financially help me. They didn't bail me out. They allowed me to fully experience the consequence of my addiction. And everything I have today stems from, and I wasn't happy with them at all. They certainly weren't trying to make me happy. They clearly were understanding what I'd go through. but it made me build the life I had today. So they gave me a great gift by stopping to control my happiness and let me experience what the other side is. And it really is a hard thing to do as a parent to let happen, but you're going to have to do it at some point. Not always in severe cases, but at some point you know your kids are going to fail. Your kids are going and teach them how to be resilient versus teaching them not to fail. You don't want a kid that never fails. There's people that go through life and they work hard. They keep it in the middle, so to speak, and they'll be successful by most measures, but they were always scared. They were always too afraid to fail to be great. People that go out and be great and they have the incredible life, most of the time have a lot of failing or a lot of failure in their history because they didn't give up. They keep pushing forward. I know of several people. They went through college. They went and got the typical profession, and they're making reasonable money, and they're going to get married and have 2.2 kids, and then all this will happen. It is great, and I'm not critical of that lifestyle. It's something that a lot of people fulfill with that, but that's the pattern for living in the middle. That's we need a lot of that. There's no problem with that, but I understand to really strive. When Bill Gates is going out to make windows. His job wasn't, I'm going to fail here. He failed a bunch, and he wasn't always happy. But he kept finding that drive. The guy, Elon Musk, the Tesla guy. I mean, he talk about resilient. This guy, he just keeps going and going and going. And he just doesn't understand, like, well, you're not successful. You're not, you have no idea what's coming. He has a lot of law of attraction beliefs himself. And so this is, and this beauty of it is you can't, getting back to your general question, how do you stop it? You, as with anything, the person that is doing it has to first identify they want to stop it. And then if you can't put the brakes on immediately, you have to then take it step by step and start working on what am I trying to accomplish and why do I need this person to love me? What is missing in my life that I need this person to be happy with me? There's an old saying in addiction that goes way back, and if an active addict is happy with you, odds are you're enabling them. If they're not happy with you, you're probably treating them right. I know that sounds,
sounds cruel. I know,
but it sounds cruel, but it's true because your addiction is about fulfilling that immediate stuff and that instant gratification. It's about versus getting your life back. So fixing it. That's why codependency is such a difficult thing to get under control because there's so much guilt and there's so much shame and there's so much I should be a better parent and the moment you start pulling away and then I can't believe that that Betty's allowing Jimmy to suffer this much and you hear that from a friend or a family and then they run and rescue them again and again and again and rescuing them emotionally. I've worked a lot with families of, he didn't mean to do that or making excuses. No, he did mean to do it. He did it on purpose. He wants to get better, but we got to stop making the excuses for them and trying to control their perspective and their happiness. And that's a much bigger fish to fry than, it's a very complicated thing. Codependency, and that the overall general need to control others' emotions or your emotions being dictated by someone else's. I can't be happy unless that person's happy. You're giving it away. You're selling yourself away. And there's usually an unworthiness attached to that. I'm not worthy of happiness kind of mentality on some level. And that seems to be pretty big too.
One of the things I love about doing this podcast and doing it with you guys is that I've got 5 of you and Cindy and Wendy and David and Tom. All of you are professional life coaches, which is great because it means I don't have to be one. I can just let you guys do all the life coach side of it, right? I can just talk about it from my own perspective. But if I were a life coach, I just had this feeling I would want to work on helping to improve the happiness level of the person who is trying to help somebody else's happiness level. And
Yeah.
even as I say that, I can tell there's something wrong with the way I'm formulating it, because then now I'm the one who's trying to make somebody else happy. But on some level, that person needs to take on the responsibility of being happy themselves within themselves, regardless of what's going on with their kid or their friend or their spouse or whoever it is that they're trying to make happy. Am I off base there?
No, you're exactly right. But also as you're saying, you got to be careful. You're not going. You got to get them to get there themselves. That's the beauty of one of the techniques I learned that has worked best, especially with my younger clients. And without arrogance, I really sort of have mastered this, and I feel good about it. The most effective way that I can get any young person to adhere to any type of recovery plan or life coaching plan is to make everything that we do appear to be their idea.
Oh.
And you can plan it, and then when they repeat it back to you, go, oh my God, that's brilliant. You know what I mean? And a lot of times, they most times they're like, yeah, I came up with that, and that not even realizing, like 2 sessions ago, you told them exactly that, but you planted it for them.
And I suppose ideally, what you really want is
you
want them eventually to get to the point where they really are coming up with the idea.
Well, that's it. They're coming up with it. They developed it. It doesn't mean that they can't. I don't care where it came from. Well, and what you're talking about is the answer to this is allowing people to see they are in charge of their own happiness. But it's almost like if I were to try to convince you right now, this is almost the equivalent. What you believe, Walt, is the color red is really the color blue.
No, it's not.
And yeah, I'm going to have to convince you of that. I'm going to have to show evidence. I'm going to have to convince you of all it. And then you're still going to say, okay, this is the craziest guy I've ever talked to. He thinks red is blue. And it's almost that level, because it's most of the time it's handed down. I'm not worthy of happiness by myself. I have to be the creator of happiness. That's where my happiness lies. And that's a sort of a really deep thing that usually is a generational thing. And so breaking through that, the biggest way to help a codependent person is to help them, as you said, learn they are in charge of their happiness independent of what else is happening around them. And then when they become happy, it's like when you're seeing just different modeling of behavior. You're teaching the people around you they can be happy. One of the statements my mom made in frustration many years ago, and again, I'm not critical of my mom. We had a wonderful relationship. She passed away last year, and so I truly do miss her. But she was a great teacher to me in many ways. And as I developed in my life, and in my younger life, she was a great teacher, and also in our adult life. And she made the statement to me. She was frustrated with something and someone, and she said, I'm really tired of being everyone's doormat. And I was like, and of course I'm the wrong person to say that to. And I said, well, Mom, the only way you can be the doormat is if you're lying on the ground.
True.
And and the concept for her that she had the ability to not be someone's, she was at mercy. Her feelings were at the mercy of others. And we worked really hard over the years, and she really changed that view a lot toward the end of her life.
Good for
but
her.
it was, yeah, she grew up in a severely abusive alcoholic family. The dysfunction of the family was just great. I mean, even to the end. I mean, alcohol was the basis behind it all. My grandfather's severe addiction, and then of course my grandmother's reaction, my grandfather, then my mom's reaction, my grandmother, and it's sad to see how it literally destroyed a family and destroyed individuals in the family throughout the years, because it became such a codependent thing. And again, usually on one side of addiction, there's codependence, but there's also codependence independent of other addiction. It's just the idea that I need someone to make me feel I'm not worthy of feeling it myself. So the best way to make me feel better is to make sure my kid or my loved one is feeling better. Then I can be happy. And when they're sad, I'll be sad. It just, what a sad way to live life, where you're so dependent on another's emotions or up and down. It just, when you get to that place of independence, help people to understand that. That's when you're able to break that cycle of codependency and that cycle of being stuck, so to speak.
And as I think about it, it's actually a big part of our culture. I mean, as you were talking, I had like a throwback to an old Tom Jones song in which he sang, "You make me so very happy. I'm so glad you came into my life." I'm thinking, well, there's codependence in one sentence.
Yeah, it really is. And it doesn't mean that you can't appreciate, and I'm grateful that there's such incredible people in my life. I'm grateful that you and I have become friends. And I mean this with great respect. I love our collaborative efforts, and I love where we're going with our podcast. But your happiness, while I'd want you to be happy, I'm not going to spend all day trying to make you happy. I understand you got to get there yourself.
That won't work.
Yeah. But over the years, I've watched you, again, just what I've been able to see. I've seen you make changes in your life on things that you thought were out of your control that are solely in your control now. And I've seen that amazing awakening in you. And you're a different person than we first started talking in a lot of ways. And I'm not suggesting I'm in charge of that. You did the work. You started saying, maybe this. And so within that, you see how within any therapeutic intervention or any therapeutic attempt, through any kind of counseling, at the end of the day, the goal is to get the person to take responsibility for their situation and take action. That's what you're trying to do. There's millions of ways to get there. There's millions of theories of how to get there, but it is trying to get them to that place. And just like the Tom Jones song says, I'm so happy you can. And it can be, if you're really in a great place mentally, I'm really glad that I manifested you into my life. It really makes me happy that I'm in charge of that. That could be a more, that wouldn't make a very rhyming song.
That's true.
But but it could be interpreted as a concept of, when I got to the right place, the right things happen. And one of my other posts that I did recently is, it's sort of the concept of when you're on your way, I think the statement was, as you start to walk on the way appears. So as you believe in your walk, as you believe in your journey, the journey then appears before you. It's sort of that, it isn't some mystical thing that I'm talking about, but again, it's this concept of moving forward, and the blanks will be filled in. The law of attraction will attach to whatever emotion you're putting out there. And that's the beauty of the law of attraction. We say that every week. It attaches to the emotion of where you're putting out there, that desperation to make another person happy. When you're doing it from a law of attraction standpoint, the law of attraction says, so desperation is what you want. Let's give you some more of that. and then that's what it attaches to.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so we've gotten, let's say we've actually succeeded. You're coaching a client, you're coaching somebody, you've been helping them understand that they're responsible for their own happiness, that it really doesn't pay to try to manage somebody else's happiness. And now their next step is, okay, well, I know I have to do this, but what do I do? I know how to manage somebody else's happiness. I don't know how to manage my own happiness. How do I do it? Where do I begin?
That becomes probably the hardest part of the equation is finding the definition of your own happiness. What is that? And when one of the tasks that I have, I put on people, so, I ask the question, obviously, okay, we're here. So what does happy look like? Well, happiness is me having, a beach house. Okay, no.
Well, it's a start.
Thank you for answering the question wrongly, because it gives a place to start. But a beach house may be part of the benefit of you being happy. But again, a beach house isn't going to make you happy. Where do you start? What is fulfillment for today? What does today look like? Let's break it down in today. I sort of focus everything on my life coaching. While the future has merit, the past can be a lesson. The only relevant thing that we exist in is today. That's sole relevance takes place today. So right now, to flip the switch, what makes you happy? Helping other people. I love to help other people. I not help them manage their emotion. I love to be in a position to share my life. I love my job. I'm happy to get up and go to work every day. My job's not making me happy. I'm happy that I get to do it. There's two different things there. I'm glad that I make good money. However, the money isn't making me happy. The money is a byproduct, and that it sounds like we're splitting hairs, but we're not. It very much is two different things. Making money. There's other. I've turned down several jobs over the last few years of managing residential treatment facilities for large amounts of money. I mean, a lot of money, and ownership and certain things in the company. But I don't want that because it doesn't make me happy to do that job, because 75% of that job is minutia and paperwork and regulations and stuff that I'm just not into. There's other people that would love that. So my hell may be your nirvana, but that's the there isn't one answer for one person. It's helping them develop what is your happiness. What does that look like? How does happy feel to you? What do you envision? So you start developing the thing that doesn't rely on other people, places, or things, other than yourself. What does happiness look like? I like to get up and go to work. I enjoy what I do. That makes me happy. Yesterday was a national holiday. I only worked half a day, so I enjoy doing that. I don't view it as going to work. I view it as I get to do what I love. I get energized by what I do. I can be happy without doing that. I write books. I also did meditation yesterday. I was very happy that I was able to get a 45-minute meditation in yesterday. It felt really great. Last night, our neighborhood put on an incredible fireworks display last night. It was amazing. I couldn't believe that like the locals have gotten together, and it gets bigger every year, but it looked professional. It was great. We had a great time mingling with the neighbors. Justin was running around the pond, that we were having. All the kids were out there, with their glow sticks, and they had a blast. It was a great night. It was looking around, saying, this feels really good. I was able to enjoy the environment of all that. That was something that I had a great day yesterday, and I'm predicting I'm having a great day today. And I'm in charge of it. And if I get off track of that, I can pull myself back in. But helping people develop their own version of happiness. My version of happiness may look horrible to someone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's wow, I can't believe you consider that being happy. Again, that's what makes us, the individual, make that our own path. Your path is your path. I can't walk it for you. I can walk it with you and help you see your path, but I can't do it for you. You have to do that yourself. And that's the beauty of it.
With some 7 billion people on the face of the planet, I suspect there are 7 billion different answers to the question of what makes you happy. I know that in my own case, I remember first asking myself the question, and I remember one of my first reactions was, there aren't enough positive words in the English language. I can't find them. But as I was asking myself the question, what would make me happy, and drawing a blank for the longest time, I came to a couple conclusions. First, I recognized that I was asking the question in the context of how I was going to earn a living. In other words, whatever answer I came up with had to include this was going to produce money for me, because I needed to have a way to earn a living. And once I recognized that I was making a connection that didn't have to be there, well, first of all, that was a hard realization to come to. I can actually choose to be happy independently of whether I'm making money. Oh, no, that's not going to work. Well, that's what I was wrestling with. So that was a big one for me. The second one that was a big one was getting to the point where I could finally admit to myself, I don't really know what's going to make me happy. I don't really know how to be happy. And in fact, if I'm really honest about it, I don't have a whole lot of practice with feeling happy. And then I had to look at it in a completely different way. Now I had to start asking myself, well, what does make me happy? Can I think of anything at all that makes me happy? It took some time. It takes time to kind of work through it. Like, well, Yeah, what does make me happy? And slowly, ever so slowly, I started to get answers. And over time, it's actually
Yes.
accelerated. But at first, it was really, really slow. It's like pulling my own teeth. Like I mean, I can't find any. And then eventually, I found that walking in nature, I felt happy. Well, first of all, I had to recognize that I actually felt happy. I had walked in nature
Right.
for a number of years, and I never allowed myself to feel happy. And then I finally said to
Right.
myself, I actually enjoy this. Maybe I should feel it. Maybe I should actually celebrate it as I'm doing it. And in the decision that I made and in the act of carrying out that decision, all of a sudden I became a little bit happier. It was really remarkable.
Yes. Yes. And what you're describing, which is, and I'm so glad you worded it that way. Part of the journey of happiness is finding out happiness itself. That's part of the journey. What does make you tick? And again, 7 billion people have 7 billion different answers.
Mm.
And to me, that's part of that unique code that we're made up of. What drives you? I know people like, I love to study. I love to learn. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly taking classes. I'm fascinated in metaphysics and brain science and all these other things. I mean, I simultaneously in the middle of taking working on a PhD in metaphysics while I'm completed a brain coaching, training.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, what? Why are you doing it? I love that. That's exciting to me. Other people would view that as hell. Now, I also know people that are fascinated by, Middle Eastern history or, some of that. And I'm like, oh God, who cares? So that's not my happy, but other people, so that's what it is. But we've given a delusion of having money will make you happy. And there's tons of evidence that isn't true. Now, having money when you are happy gives you I'd much rather have money while
sure.
I'm happy than not have money.
Absolutely.
I'd certainly rather have that.
Yeah.
I have choices now because I have access to resources that I wouldn't have had. But I wasn't ever going to have anything until I was happy. And then everything came along. and that's, that I know it sounds counterintuitive, but and I don't mind working hard can easily be part of this process. It's absolutely working hard, but doing it for the right reason, doing it because you love it. I know people that are obsessed with their chefs, and they spend hours on food, and they cook as a hobby, and that's exciting to them. I'm bored stiff with that concept, but it's great for them.
Yeah,
it's great for them.
Actually, I take some pleasure in the fact that so many people like doing things I don't like to do. So, for instance, I really don't want to be an archaeologist working in the desert, brushing sand off one grain at a time off of some artifact that I found. I'm glad that there are others who do that.
Right.
I just really don't want to have to do it myself. So I'm very grateful for the fact that they're going to do it, because I get this interesting information that comes out of it. And I was a programmer for many years, and I never really got to be a great programmer, partly because I never really had training. When I started doing it, there wasn't much training. Since then, there's all kinds of training now for programmers. So today's programmers coming out of school know a whole lot more than I've learned by my seat of the pants method. And I really have no desire to go back to it at all. I mean, it got to the point where it was a headache. So I'm really grateful that there are programmers out there who are willing to do the programming that I don't want to do, because I get the benefit of that programming.
Right. Well, yes, and that's like you said, the archaeologists. They're great. They give us a lot of science. They give us, they sort of, they fill in science in a way, and they help us see history so we can look at how everything got to a place today. I think it's I'm glad there's people that enjoy that. The concept of me doing it is laughable. I would not. I mean, my ADHD would be like, "Oh, are you kidding me? Let's just take a shovel and chop this stuff out."
Yeah, right.
I have some of my good friends are avid golfers. I mean, they will go spend 3 or 4 hours on a golf course every Saturday. Just shoot me now. Just shoot me now. I know you love baseball. I
do.
Really do, and and I always kid you about that.
And you know that I detest football, and you love football.
I love football. Yeah, so I mean, so I enjoy. In fact, one of the things, and it's a recovery story, but it actually applies directly to the topic. Just thought about it. Early in my addiction recovery, I just gotten my first apartment, and it was a very tiny apartment, and I literally had, when I say no money, I'm talking, I was operating on very slim margins, and I had restitution for my criminal activity that I was paying back. I had to pay rent. I had a lot of stuff going on. So there was a Saturday afternoon in September, and I had nothing to do and had no money to do anything with. So I had a neighbor who was also in recovery, and he says, "Hey, you want to go buy some cheap hamburgers and hot dogs and grill them today and watch the Florida Gators were playing a football game. It's my favorite college football team." And we were, and said, we'll bring the TV outside. He had a huge oak tree. It was really nice. We'll just watch it and grill. So I said, yeah, it sounds fun. I mean, it didn't really sound fun, but it sounded better than doing nothing.
Okay.
So we brought it out and set it up. Well, the neighbors across the street came over and said, "Hey, you got to, what are you guys doing?" So they had kids, and so the kids came over, the parents came over, and we had, several people in the neighborhood come around. We had like 11 or 12 people show up.
Wow. People
started bringing food, bringing steaks, and salad. I mean, it turned into a pretty big event just by lighting a grill and bringing TV out.
Yeah.
We started playing wiffle ball. I don't know if you remember wiffle ball.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, the kids are playing wiffle ball. I view that day as one of the most fun days of my entire life.
Really? Wow.
I view that. In fact, that was a day of awakening. I didn't quite get it until I was able to look at it later. I had very little positive in my life at that time, but that day gave me a glimpse of pure happiness. We had fun, and I mean, I said I didn't spend a penny that day, and it just was fun. I enjoyed it. It was a really great day. I remember the weather. It had now Florida, I mean, instead of 97, it was probably 91. So
right.
It was a nice cool day.
So it was cool, right?
Yeah, cooler comparative. But it was just a very, everybody was laughing and fun. And ironically, some of those kids, they were, I don't know, 8, 9, or 10 back then. Well, they're grown men now. And I will see them, and they still remember that day. All this that happened in their life.
Wow.
I have some of them coming. Do you remember our wiffle ball game? And us, and most of them just remember eating hot dogs and playing wiffle ball for hours on end and laughing and all of it. And they said that was one of. And it's amazing that all this time and all their childhood and all their experiences, they remember that game as just that day as being so exciting. So that tells you something, Walt. That was an unexpected happiness that it came out of nowhere, and I was really caught off guard by that. Really had nothing to do with anything but my perspective.
Well, plus it also is a great reminder that when something good does happen, it's really important to celebrate it. It's really important to if necessary, make yourself excited about it. In that case, it was easy because it just kind of built on its own. But look at all the memory that came out of the fact that they got so excited during that event, and it stuck with them for a lifetime. Well, imagine if we're doing that all the time. That's what I think to myself.
What if every day had that potential? Let me back up. Every day does have that potential. What if we activated that potential every day?
Right. Yeah, that's a blow me away concept. We got about a minute left, actually less than that because of the music. Before we leave, how does somebody reach out to you? Because you're always a great resource. I get people who ask, how do I reach Joel? How do people reach Joel if they want to get some personal help?
My website is joelelston.com. My Gmail is joelelston at Gmail. It's the simplest way to get me. I answer all emails. It's quicker than any way because they come. I get them on my phone. So anytime someone wants to reach out, joelelston at gmail.com.
Fantastic. Joel, the only regret I have is we only talk once a week, but boy, I can't wait till next week.
All right. Good to talk to you, my friend.
And we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.